Get ready to question everything you thought you knew about military history. Some stories are so strange they sound like they were ripped from a Hollywood script. But believe it or not, every single one of these is true. Let's start with a feathered Special Operations Unit. During World War II, before the age of smart bombs, the British had a different idea: Project Pigeon. They trained pigeons to guide bombs to their targets. The pigeon was placed in the nose cone of a missile, where it would peck at an image of the target on a screen. Each peck adjusted the missile's fins, steering it towards its destination. It sounds absurd, but in tests, the birds were surprisingly accurate. The project was eventually shelved when radar technology proved more reliable, but for a moment, the fate of a mission rested on the beak of a bird. Next, we have Wojtek, the soldier bear. In 1942, Polish soldiers stationed in Iran found an orphaned Syrian brown bear cub. They adopted him, named him Wojtek, and he became their unofficial mascot. As he grew, he learned to march alongside the soldiers and even salute. When the unit was deployed to Italy, they couldn't bring a pet. So they did the only logical thing: they officially enlisted him into the Polish army. Private Wojtek was assigned to the 22nd Artillery Supply Company, where he famously carried heavy crates of ammunition during the Battle of Monte Cassino. After the war, he retired to the Edinburgh Zoo, a celebrated war hero. Not all animal operatives were so successful. In the 1960s, at the height of the Cold War, the CIA cooked up a plan called Acoustic Kitty. The idea was to surgically implant a microphone, antenna, and battery into a cat, and then release it near Soviet compounds to eavesdrop on conversations. After reportedly spending millions of dollars on the project, the first field test was a disaster. The specially trained cat was released from a van, immediately ran into the street, and was hit by a taxi. The mission was over before it even began. Think wars have to be long, drawn-out affairs? Think again. The Anglo-Zanzibar War of 1896 holds the record for the shortest war in history. After the pro-British Sultan of Zanzibar died, his cousin seized power without British approval. The British Empire issued an ultimatum: stand down or face the consequences. The new Sultan refused. At 9:02 a.m. on August 27th, the Royal Navy began bombarding the Sultan's palace. By 9:40 a.m., the palace was in ruins. The Sultan had fled, and the war was over. Total duration, a mere 38 minutes. Long before drones, ancient Chinese military engineers used a surprisingly simple tool for aerial reconnaissance: kites. They would fly specially designed kites over enemy territory to measure distances for their artillery, gauge wind direction for arrow volleys, and even drop propaganda messages. It was a brilliant low-tech solution for gathering critical intelligence from a safe distance, proving that innovation isn't always about complex machinery. During World War II, the U.S. Army assembled a unit unlike any other: the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, better known as the Ghost Army. This top-secret unit of artists, designers, and sound engineers was tasked with one mission: deception. They used inflatable tanks, rubber airplanes, powerful speakers blasting the sounds of troop movements, and fake radio chatter to create the illusion of massive armies where there were none. Their masterpiece was tricking the Germans into believing the D-Day invasion would happen at Pas-de-Calais, miles from the real landings at Normandy, saving countless lives. Sometimes, a conflict can erupt over the smallest things. In 1976, in the Korean demilitarized zone, a simple poplar tree was blocking the view between two UN observation posts. When a U.S. work party went to trim it, they were attacked by North Korean soldiers, and 2 American officers were killed. The U.S. response was swift and overwhelming. Operation Paul Bunyan involved hundreds of troops, 27 helicopters, B-52 bombers, and F-4 Phantom jets, all to provide cover for a team of engineers to cut down one tree. It was a massive show of force, sending an unmistakable message. Could a samurai really stop a bullet? It sounds like something out of a movie, but it's true. In 16th century Japan, as firearms became more common on the battlefield, samurai armor had to evolve. Master armorers created elite sets called Tamishi Gusoku, which literally means bullet-tested armor. These were fired upon with muskets to prove their strength. If the armor withstood the shot, the dent was often left as a mark of quality and a badge of honor, proving its wearer was protected by the best technology of the day. Imagine a fire that couldn't be put out with water. In fact, water only made it burn more fiercely. This was Greek fire, the secret weapon of the Byzantine Empire. Launched from ships through siphons, this mysterious incendiary substance would cling to enemy vessels and personnel, burning them to cinders. For centuries, it gave the Byzantines naval supremacy. To this day, the exact chemical formula for Greek fire remains one of history's most enduring mysteries. The British Special Operations Executive had some truly creative ideas for sabotage during WW2. One of the most bizarre was the exploding rat. The plan was to fill the carcasses of dead rats with plastic explosives. These would then be distributed near German factory boiler rooms. The assumption was that a stoker, seeing a dead rat, would simply shovel it into the furnace. The resulting explosion would hopefully trigger a massive boiler detonation. The first shipment of rats was intercepted by the Germans, so the plan was never fully deployed. However, the discovery terrified them, leading to a massive paranoid rat hunt that wasted significant German resources. In 1932, Australia faced an unusual enemy: emus. After World War I, thousands of ex-soldiers were given land to farm, but their crops were being devastated by a migration of 20,000 emus. The farmers, many of them veterans, pleaded for help. So the Australian military was deployed, armed with machine guns, to declare war on the birds. It was a disaster. The emus proved to be surprisingly difficult targets, scattering in all directions and running faster than the soldiers could aim. After several failed attempts, the military withdrew. The emus had won the Great Emu War. Biological warfare took a chilling turn with Britain's Operation Vegetarian. The plan was to drop thousands of cattle cakes laced with deadly anthrax spores all over Germany. The goal was to completely wipe out the German livestock population, causing mass starvation and crippling their food supply. The anthrax-laced cakes were produced and ready to go. The plan was only called off in 1944 as the war was turning in the Allies' favor. The terrifying potential of this weapon was so great that the contaminated test site, Gruinard Island in Scotland, remained quarantined for decades. Even a military genius like Napoleon Bonaparte wasn't immune to a comical defeat. To celebrate a treaty, Napoleon's chief of staff organized a grand rabbit hunt. He gathered hundreds, or possibly thousands of rabbits for the occasion. There was just one problem. Instead of wild rabbits, he had purchased tame ones from local farmers. When the cages were opened, the rabbits didn't flee in fear. They saw Napoleon and his party as a source of food. A fluffy, hungry horde swarmed the emperor, climbing up his legs and jacket. Napoleon was forced to retreat to his carriage, laughing as he fled the bunny attack. How do you send a secret message when you know your messenger might be searched? The ancient Romans had a painful but clever solution. A commander would shave the head of a trusted courier and tattoo a secret message directly onto their scalp. They would then wait for the hair to grow back, completely concealing the message. The courier could then travel through enemy lines without any incriminating documents. Upon reaching his destination, his head was shaved again to reveal the hidden orders. Next up, bat bombs. During World War II, a dental surgeon from Pennsylvania proposed a wild idea to the U.S. military: attach tiny incendiary bombs to bats. The plan was to drop canisters full of these hibernating bats over Japanese cities. As the bats fell, they would wake up, fly into the nooks and crannies of Japan's wooden buildings to roost, and then the timed explosives would detonate, starting thousands of fires simultaneously. The concept was actually tested and proved effective. A little too effective, in fact, when some armed bats escaped and burned down a U.S. Army hangar. The project was eventually scrapped in favor of the atomic bomb. In the midst of World War II, the Allies were desperate for a way to combat German U-boats in the icy North Atlantic. A British inventor proposed Project Habakkuk, the construction of a massive, unsinkable aircraft carrier made from a mixture of ice and sawdust called pykrete. A prototype was built in a Canadian lake and proved surprisingly durable. However, the project was ultimately abandoned. The sheer amount of steel and resources required for the refrigeration system was immense, and by then, the tide of the war was already turning. The Trojan horse is one of the most famous stories of military deception ever told. While many believe it to be pure myth, some historians suggest it could be based on a real event. The horse may not have been a giant wooden animal filled with soldiers, but rather a type of siege engine that was either shaped like a horse or simply had horse in its name. The Greeks might have left it behind as a supposed offering, only to use it to breach Troy's walls once it was brought inside. Real or not, it remains the ultimate symbol of psychological warfare. Here's another clever deception from World War II: Operation Cornflakes. The Allies wanted to spread anti-Nazi propaganda directly to the German people. So, the Office of Strategic Services forged German postage stamps and mail bags. They would then bomb German mail trains, and in the ensuing chaos, OSS agents dressed as postal workers would swap their propaganda-filled mail bags in with the real German mail. The idea was that the German postal service itself would unknowingly deliver anti-Hitler letters right to people's breakfast tables, hence the name. Perhaps the most brilliant deception of the entire war was Operation Mincemeat. To trick the Nazis into thinking the Allies would invade Greece and Sardinia instead of the real target, Sicily, British intelligence concocted an elaborate hoax. They acquired the body of a deceased man, dressed him as a Royal Marine officer, and chained a briefcase containing fake invasion plans to his wrist. They then dropped the body off the coast of Spain, where they knew it would be found by pro-German officials. Hitler took the bait completely, diverting crucial troops away from Sicily. The deception was a stunning success. Finally, we have Project Stargate. From the 1970s through the 90s, the U.S. military and CIA spent millions of dollars on a top-secret program to investigate psychic abilities for military intelligence. They hired and trained so-called remote viewers, individuals who claimed they could psychically see a person, place, or event anywhere in the world. These psychic spies were tasked with everything from locating downed Soviet bombers to finding hostages. While the program's effectiveness is highly debated, the fact that it was officially funded for over 2 decades is mind-boggling. From bomb-guiding pigeons to psychic spies, history is filled with tales that prove truth is often stranger than fiction. These stories show us that in times of conflict, human creativity, and sometimes absurdity, knows no bounds. Thanks for watching. If you found these facts as fascinating as I did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more unbelievable stories from history. See you next time.